Today we're going to talk about Alistair Douglas, and it's a pretty interesting story that you can hear about on Netflix. Greg, tell us about the videos we're going to watch.
Yeah, so if you've seen the Amy Bradley is Missing Netflix special, this is the guy called Yellow, who was a bassist in the band on the ship that they were on. This interview is from True Crime This Week with James Renner. Go show him some behavior panel love, subscribe and like. This is a good video and a good interview by him. Alistair Yellow Douglas is the guy we're talking to. This woman came up missing in 1998 and has never been seen again.
What do you remember after all of these years? Do you remember Amy at all?
There's not a lot to remember in terms of remembering her, but I remember the short conversation we've had. It was, I think it was a Monday night. I believe it was a Monday night. It's been years, so it's either Monday or Tuesday, but I believe it was a Monday night. There's a program called Dancing Under the Stars.
Yeah. Oh, I should tell you, I was on the ship like a month ago. I took a trip on the Rhapsody.
Oh.
So I know the layout of Viking Lounge. And all that.
Lovely. So, as usual, we play until midnight. We were sailing out of Aruba.
Yeah.
The next day should be Curacao.
Yep.
So as you sail out of Aruba, we have this thing called Dancing Under the Stars. And we played. We finished a little after 12. We supposed to finish by 12. A little after 12. I can't tell you exactly what time. And normally people always come up and talk to us. And I remember her clearly coming across when we finished playing and came across to me and said, "Hi, good set, back then when I played, I jump around a lot and all of that." And many persons would have always compliment or talk about my way of entertaining. So I said, "Thank you," like normal. And then she said to me that she blows a saxophone. I said, "Okay, interesting. What do you blow?" And first thing, like, what kind of music you like? And but at that time we were packing up. The band was packing up.
Yeah.
And I said to her, because that used to be my line. Once we finished play, we would go up to the lounge. What's this called at the time? What's the name of the club? You just
Viking,
came from the Viking Lounge, yeah. And we will hang there, but we would only hang until 1 o'clock, 5 to 1, 10 to 1, because as entertainers, we could hang, but we need to be out of the area by 1 o'clock.
All right, Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, it starts off, if you watch Yellow, this guy here, he's talking and he gets interrupted as the interviewer says, "I was on the ship yesterday." When he says lovely, Mark, that's a beautiful example of your culture going, not interesting, but okay.
Yeah.
And you can see it in his body language because he's got feigned interest and then maybe a little contempt as the interviewer says that. And then he uses the word "so" to bridge, to get back to the details. And the thing he describes here when he's talking about this, he reminds me of you guys who have professionally been entertainers when you go up to meet public, that demeanor of you're polite but not interested. That's what this feels like to me. But as he tells his story, we see good use of illustrators with extended fingers and thumbs, the back of his hand, and then using rolling body language as he's saying "as usual." I think if I think about a guy who is playing sets on a cruise ship, that for me would be a personal hell, repeating the same thing over and over and over. But I would imagine, and Scott, you probably will be able to talk this more than anybody, if you're a musician, you're playing the same set over and over and over, as usual becomes kind of a thing. The timing is probably consistent. You know exactly what you're going to do. You probably feel like you're caught in a groundhog loop, a Groundhog's Day loop, and so you would go through there. So I'll push that to you in just a minute. But playing a given set or doing that would give memorization and timing, and I would think he would say this is just normal. He does good storytelling with his hands, illustrating leaving one place, leaving Aruba and going to the next. There's some contempt at people that come up to talk to us. You see that little bit of rise in the left side of his face. I think that's entertainer getting overwhelmed with people coming up all the time. And there's a right amount of eye accessing and breaking eye contact and good eye contact to make it look like it's true. Look, when we talk about body language, if I give you 5 pieces, gestures, something that means something in your culture, illustrators, when I point and emphasize what my brain is thinking with my body, regulators, the way I control the conversation by speed up or slow down or stop, adapters where I'm releasing nervous energy, and then barriers where I put something between us. Of those 5, 3 of those are designed to help tell my story. A gesture, an illustrator, or a regulator are there to help me control the story. Adapters and barriers happen when I feel uncomfortable or my brain is trying to tell one story and my mouth another. So we'll start from here and we'll look for heavier the three, gestures, illustrators, and regulators than the two that are negative. And as long as that's going, we usually think, okay, pretty good. That's a red flag for me when the mix changes, and I'll point those out when I see it. Scott, what do you got? Being a musician, you are.
All right, yeah. As far as the musician thing goes, I was a studio rat, so I was never out playing clubs and doing all that stuff. We were always making records. But the guys that did that just becomes, you always hear, oh, I've got a job, it's work and all that. That's when it's work. That's what they mean. Because you go out there and you have to do the same thing over and over and over. But people like doing that. They really enjoy doing that because even though it is repetitive, you're getting to be, on stage and people see and all that, and you're creating a groove and everybody moves to it and all that. So there's a whole thing with that. It's not my bag, but I know guys that really like doing that. To this day, they enjoy doing that. So I can see where he's coming from with that. It's just, and it's a mindset you got to get into, because after a while, you're not going to be a star, baby. You're just going to be, you're just going to be doing clubs and that kind of thing, but you still do it because you like doing it. So you get to play your instrument, and that's what you've always studied and always done, and you get better every time you do it in the whole bit. So I totally get it, I totally understand that. So I think what we're seeing is this is natural. When he first starts talking, he's wiping his face off. He's grooming to get ready to start the interview. So he's getting ready to, start talking, telling the story. The large illustrators we're seeing, those show confidence. I'm going to ask you, Mark, right now. We're seeing a lot of illustrators. I know there's different planes going on, but man, he's in here, then one goes up and he's down here. We got doubles going on. What's happening there? What in the truth plane world, what's going on there?
Every time we do this program, we're trying to give you a set of skills that are usable to protect yourself from people who are unscrupulous. But when you're dealing with crime on the internet, it's a different story. Those are not easy for most of us to pick up on. I've taught for many years that trust, hope, faith, and believe are great church words, but not good for strategy. For strategy, you need to take action. Bank of America recently announced a data breach, and here's what's really disturbing. They didn't tell anybody for 9 months. On average, it takes a company 277 days to report a breach of your personal data. And last year, Citigroup and JP Morgan Chase both announced breaches. Your bank could be breached right now, and you could be months from learning about it. Do you really want to give a criminal a 9-month head start? That's why for us, it's an important time to be talking about today's sponsor, Aura. Aura alerts me if they find my phone number, email, or social security number on the dark web. They're going to let me know fast if anyone tries to use this information to access my credit or bank accounts through an app on my phone. They also give me $5 million in identity theft insurance should the worst case scenario happen. They also provide a bunch of other features to keep you safe online, all inside one app. You can go to our link today at aura.com/TBP to try for 14 days free. That will give Aura enough time to find out if your personal data is exposed, and you'll learn about it before these companies are forced to notify you. I recommend you do this right now because the only thing most of these companies are going to do to help you is to offer free credit monitoring after the fact. So at least you'll know you're in trouble next time. But if you still haven't been a victim of fraud yet and you still feel lucky, are you going to keep rolling the dice? If you haven't done anything because it feels overwhelming, let Aura do the hard work for you. I'm not leaving myself and my family vulnerable to these data breaches. And if you don't want to either, you can go to aura.com/TBP.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's what we've got to pay attention to, Scott, is the camera angle's very low. So it's going to look a lot like he's up in passion, up in this chest area here, sometimes asymmetrical. And just like you say, Greg, there's a lot of illustrators there. But, it could be a little bit lower than that. And just the camera angle is making it look higher. So I'd have to kind of, reserve judgment until I got a better camera angle with him. But listen, Scott, we'll see him getting really definitely quite passionate a lot later on in the videos,
Yeah. But so this thing with this asymmetric thing, is there anything to that? Or you want to wait? I'm not ruining your thing.
Well, here's what I'd say about it. from an audience point of view, from a viewer's point of view, it's more difficult to comprehend, especially when the asymmetry keeps changing. What does it mean in terms of the person producing those gestures? That becomes a little complex and a kind of a bit of a blind alley to go down. You can go down that alley, but it doesn't bring you as much joy as you might hope, I would say. But all I would say is it will look quite interesting and it'll look at times quite confusing. We've got to be careful about that and the camera angle on there.
Okay. All right, cool. Thanks. All right, so he has a couple of tics, and those could be from increased nervousness, because we're seeing a lot of emotion going in and out of these questions. He goes from one emotion to another emotion, and this is happening fairly freely. So he's not zeroed in on one thing that he's thinking about, because we're seeing all these different emotions come over him. And these little tics that happen are they're quite common to a lot of people. I remember one time we were in the studio, and I think we were doing Charlie Daniels. It was like his bluegrass album or something. And I was pretty nervous about it because he'd never done one before. And then the engineer I always use, Patrick, my buddy, he said, "Man, why do you keep doing that?" And I said, "Why do I keep doing a lot?" He says, "You're doing this with your eyes." And I said, "Oh my God, I got to stop doing it." I said, "How long have I been doing that?" He goes, "For about 2 weeks." The whole time we were making this record. And I'm sure over this song, I'll be sitting there doing that, because we were doing 2 records that we were juggling albums. We'd work on that one in the daytime. There was one we were doing late night. It was, it was getting to both of us. But so when you get a lot of stress on you, I'm sure you start doing that stuff. And so I think that's what we're seeing. And his are sort of timed when he talks. They happen when he speaks. The words he's speaking, that's when he does the squinting. So I thought that was really interesting. I don't think we're seeing any cognitive overload there. That's why those emotions are so freely scooching, coming in and out. And like Greg was saying, we're seeing a lot of space between the fingers. So he's confident with what he's talking about as his hands go up in the different planes, Mark. So I think I think in this section, I'm not seeing any deception. I don't think he's trying to hide anything. I think we're seeing him being honest about answering this question, about everything he's talking about. Captain Kirk, what do you have?
Well, he's definitely not going at warp speed here. He's slow, composed. We're not seeing any deception indicators. I completely agree with you, Scott. There are technically no indicators of deception per se that I see. But we look for the 5 C's, and this is the change, context, clusters, culture, and checklist. And we don't have a solid baseline based on this video, but there doesn't look like much going on here. I'm definitely not pronouncing his innocence, but this looks normal. His gestures match the rhythm of his speech. That's always something to look for. Scott teaches you about that all the time by saying the exact same words when he says specific words and phrases, like I did just then. And his eye accessing movements are in the typical position of a person performing genuine recall. He's not engaging in any perception management that I can detect. He's telling a story like people tell truthful stories. And this is where details get edited into the stories as memories surface. So this is very common in all of us when we're telling a story about something truthful that we don't often talk about. So the little file clerk in our head goes to the little file cabinet, and as they pull files out, we suddenly start seeing all these details pop up that we might have forgotten about. So when something has happened a long time ago, this is where, if you're an interviewer, you want to shift to present tense questions so that they also start shifting into the present tense speech when they answer. When this happens, you're way more likely to get details that are overlooked or missed. An example might be to ask, instead of, "Okay, tell me what happened," you might ask something like, "Okay, it's midnight now, you're packing up, and she comes up to the stage." So that's a present tense questioning. So the answer he gives will be in present tense 99% of the time, and a lot more likely to be in a position to recall more data. That's all I got there. Mark, did you go?
No, I've got a few more things to say, but thanks for bringing up those gesture planes there. Scott. Chase, you're spot on, because the interviewer here asks a very specific question, or has a very specific frame, which is, what do you remember after all those years? Do you remember Amy at all? Well, it's framed with, it's a long time ago, and maybe you just wouldn't remember. What if the interviewer had said, just as you were hinting at, that well, not more hinting at, you were pointing out there, Chase, what if the interviewer said, you had a good long conversation with Amy, what are the specifics that come immediately to mind for you? There might have been a whole different talk from him. So it's framed with vagueness, and that allows him to move away from the subject into the packing up of the band. He complies with the framing of the question here. It would be very easy for somebody to look at this interview here and go, wow, he's really, obfuscating from talking about her. No, he's complying with the questioning that's been asked, which is, hey, it's a long time ago and you probably don't remember her. And he's like, yeah, you're right. So he complies with the frame of the questioning and the spirit of the questioning. He says there's not a lot to remember in terms of remembering her, but I remember the short conversation that we had. And then he goes into I'll call it the alibi of packing up, and the band was packing up. Okay, so it could look like, hey, you're trying to create this alibi, but actually, Scott, as you're pointing towards as well, packing up is normal for the band. It's the time when the audience get a moment to come up and say, hey, that was great, I really loved that, and get the chance to say, hey, I play a bit of guitar as well, I play a bit of music as well. And this is exactly what's happening as he recalls it in this situation. It's just another example of somebody coming up and going, hey, you were great, I love what you're doing, and by the way, I play a bit of sax. Okay, I play a bit of saxophone. And there comes that connection. And Greg, you're right, there's a little bit of contempt.
Or blow, Mark. I think it's blow.
I blow a bit of sax. Yeah, I blow a bit of sax. Yeah,
let me bring something up, Mark. I think you play a little bit of a didgeridoo, don't you? Didn't you play?
I do.
Famous for
I do
it.
play a very small amount of didgeridoo, but was once told that I played didgeridoo on stage at Glastonbury with the Hot House Flowers, and
That's
number
impressive.
of people were absolutely certain that it was me on stage with the Hot House Flowers. I have no way of saying that it wasn't. I don't think it was me, but at those times it could have been me. It could
Mandela
have
effect.
This is the
Mandela
same
effect.
people that think you were in that Nike commercial.
Right, exactly.
With
Exactly.
a didgeridoo.
Yeah, I definitely remember that.
Were you married at the time?
No. I don't.
There you go.
happened,
You
Mark.
probably did it.
It could have happened.
What do you remember after all of these years? Do you remember Amy at all?
There's not a lot to remember in terms of remembering her, but I remember the short conversation we've had. So it was, I think it was a Monday night. I believe it was a Monday night. It's been years, so it's either Monday or Tuesday, but I believe it was a Monday night. There's a program called Dancing Under the Stars.
Yeah. Oh, I should tell you, I was on the ship like a month ago. I took a trip on the Rhapsody.
Oh.
So I know the layout of Viking
Okay.
Lounge. And all that.
Lovely. So, as usual, we play until midnight. We were sailing out of Aruba.
Yeah.
The next day should be Curacao.
Yep.
So as you sail out of Aruba, we have this thing called Dancing Under the Stars. And we played. We finished a little after 12. We supposed to finish by 12. A little after 12. I can't tell you exactly what time. And normally people always come up and talk to us. And I remember her clearly coming across when we finished playing and came across to me and said, hi, good set, I mean, back then when I played, I jump around a lot and all of that. And many persons would have always compliment or talk about my way of entertaining. So I said, thank you, like normal. And then she said to me that she blows a saxophone. I said, okay, interesting. What do you blow? And first thing, like, what kind of music you like? And but at that time we were packing up. The band was packing up.
Yeah.
And I said to her, because that used to be my line. Once we finished play, we would go up to the lounge. What's this called at the time? What's the name of the club? You just came from the Viking Lounge, yeah. And we will hang there, but we would only hang until 1 o'clock, 5 to 1, 10 to 1, because as entertainers, we could hang, but we need to be out of the area by 1 o'clock. So I went down like I normally do, changed my clothes, had a quick shower, and I came up. When I came up, she was on the deck, on the decking outside. Ah. So she saw me and she said, hi. And I said, hi, but she was smoking a lot, and that's not something I know or like. I growing up in Grenada, you hardly ever saw people smoke. And I was young, so it was like not a norm for me.
Yeah.
So we went up to the club, because that's where I was going. And we sat there. Of course, it's noisy, so there's not a lot you can say. But she was smoking a lot. And I asked her, I said, why are you, for me, it's uncomfortable. And it's like, why are you? And she said to me, she said her dad is an insurance manager or something like that. And he found out that she's gay. And he forced her to come to the cruise. Well, but first of all, with hearing that, I was like, well, I mean, I didn't know what answer to give anyway. So I said to her, I was going on the dance floor. I was only going to be able to dance maybe 1 or 2 songs because of the time. So we came on the dance floor, danced. We both were on the floor. I know there were cameras that took photos of us dancing. I remember seeing all of that. And about 5 minutes to 1, I said, look, I have to go. I've got to be out of passenger area. And I left. That was my last conversation. And
that was the last time you saw her?
Last time I saw her.
What was your response when she told you she was gay?
That's not something I'm used to.
Yeah.
So I really did not know. I just thought it was wrong that they would have forced her to come, on the cruise because they find out that she was gay. But there was not much I could even say about it because it's not something I was used to.
Yeah.
So I just left it as,
How do you...
I need the right passion behind it. I need the right.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, 2 of us in the military, you don't need any passion to swear.
Yeah. Well, I mean, back in the acting days, every other second word was that.
Hold on a second, because I just brought out a thing, and what we're talking about is Mark never cusses. I've never heard him say a bad word. I've never heard him say anything foul. And you're looking at 3 of the most foul speaking people when we're in the when we're not on the we're watching the video. We click off of here, man, it gets bad. Mark, you never say anything. You don't have that look like they're disgusted. Nothing like that. You just sit there and listen. You never say anything bad. What's up with that? What's going on?
It churns inside. It's eating me inside. It's the rage is turned.
We bother you.
Okay, because I just want. That's why I brought it up before we came in. I was wondering about that. You never use bad language.
Well, I have now and again. I have now and
Not
again.
in front of us, you haven't.
A couple
No,
of times.
no. Mark and I got into an argument in Las Vegas about some kind of like spiritual thing. Not religious, but spiritual thing. And like the layers of reality. I don't remember what it was. I think we'd had a bottle or 2 of Camus at that point.
Okay.
I can't imagine us getting into an argument, though, Chase. You sure it was an argument?
It was a friendly argument, but you were very passionate.
Yeah, okay. That's fair.
Where were we?
Vegas Hotel.
And,
the Las Vegas Marriott.
Quite a
I think
few
maybe
bottles.
you thought you were fussing. Because I'd have jumped in if somebody's fussing. I love that.
Well, if it was a few bottles that came us in, you probably weren't in the room anymore.
Yeah.
That's probably true. Not a big drinker. All right, Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, okay. Let me take a look. Oh, by the way, look, as you were mentioning, Scott, I think everybody's mentioned actually this quite kind of blinking, squinting that's going on. I agree. It's totally idiosyncratic. Yeah. If anybody's out there going, I can see the stress, I can see. No, he does it all the way through consistently. I think when he gets into his storytelling, even more and I mean good storytelling, it does escalate a little bit. Okay, so it's just idiosyncratic to him. You're also going to see lip licking as well. We'll read any book on body language, and or certainly go on the internet, and you'll find this idea that it could well be an indicator of deception. Yeah, I mean, if it's with other stuff as well, but I would say that lip licking is most likely cultural to him as well. So discount those big blinks going on, discount this lip licking that goes on. They are baseline. Okay, nothing to get interested in, I would say. Now, he talks about her behavior, the missing woman, her behavior, smoking a lot. Sounds like from his description that's chain smoking. Okay, actually, we'll see in another video, he frames it with chain smoking. That seems to be that he's suggesting there's anxiety around, as he was told, the force of her being on the cruise with her father. Okay, if that story is accurate, the story is she's anxious because she's been forced in some way, or feels forced in some way, to be on this cruise with the father. So interesting piece of, I guess, behavior that of another that he's describing to us. He describes it very well. He says the last conversation, the last time I saw her, that's a good negating gesture. Yep. There. Okay, fits exactly on specific words and phrases as well, just like I did then. Okay, so the baton gesture is there, and it's the right gesture to go with it. And there's a little bit of a wince as well, a pained expression, the last time I saw her as well. Now, what's that about? Is it the pain of his guilt around this? Well, it could be, if you want to see it from that angle. If you're looking for that, it could be that, but there's nothing else to go with that. It's more likely the pain of the last time you saw somebody, because she's disappeared, and he's implicated in this. As far as I can see, as I watch through these videos, we're going to see more pain from him around how he's implicated, but implicated and not necessarily guilty within this. What did you think when she told you that she was gay, is the question there. And there's a good double shoulder shrug from him. The double shoulder shrug is kind of, hey, what are you going to do? Like, what's it got to do with me? That's just the way it is. Okay. Now, I want you to look out later on for what you think might be a single shoulder shrug, but it might be a single shoulder shrug in other videos. But I also want you to look out as to how many double shoulder shrugs we get during this of, look, this is just the way it is. Here's how it is. What else can I tell you? There's a lot of them in this. So interesting so far, but I'm not seeing a great deal pointing towards guilt, but I'm willing, as always, to have my mind changed on this. Chase, you got anything you could change my mind on this one?
I don't think so, man. But let's talk about body narration really quick. So Scott and Greg talk about illustrators, which I'm doing right now, that I'm moving as I'm talking. But narration, in my view, is more like if I say I caught this massive fish and I'm narrating, I'm showing something with my hands. I'm showing that I was at this massive building. We just fell down this elevator. I'm driving this car. That's all body narration. And you can see him narrating the smoking here. And we also see narration for changing clothes. He does this thing with changing clothes, a quick shower, seeing her on the deck outside. He makes this big gesture. And there's several other things throughout here. So he has this tendency to narrate these things as he's talking. And every single gesture he makes here is in rhythm with his speech, except for when he found out she was gay and she was forced to to come on the cruise and finding out that she was forced to come on the cruise. Those gestures are mistimed, exactly like my hands are moving now. They were mistimed. So, but he goes back to perfect rhythm to describe going on to the dance floor with her. And then there's a mismatch again at one line when he says, I have to go. Because he's talking about the time when they've got to be off because they're employees. It's mixed with lip licking, which I think is likely a habitual behavior, but there's also a lack of a goodbye. That's the biggest thing to me. When we leave someone and we're telling a story about when we part ways, we don't say, I have to go, and then the story is over. We'll say, we said goodbye and I went to bed, or we said goodbye. There's typically something in there that says goodbye. Saying goodbye is really common in people who are telling the truth. When we see people who might be falsifying a final moment that they saw someone, we're a little bit more likely to see that. But he fades out. Scott, were you going to cover this fading facts thing?
Go ahead, dude. Go ahead.
He fades out when he says the word her. The last time I saw her, the word her disappears. Like Harry Potter. It's gone. Or like an Epstein client list. To be seen by nobody. So you just can't hear it. So we're seeing the same expressions, movements, rhythm, tone, volume, eye movement as the previous video where the questions were a little less pokey. There's one more lip-licking behavior when he mentions not replying to her, telling him she's gay. I don't think the lip-licking is very significant. It's also not a cluster. But that last time I saw her, when he says the word her, that sounded important to me. Scott, how do your Einstein ears hear that phrase?
I agree with you, because the whole volume, when he first begins, he's going to a pretty good clip. You know, his cadence, voice tone, volume, those things are up. But when we get to this clip, things start slowing down. Everything changes here. He gets more relaxed. And I think what we're seeing when he talks about her, finding out she's gay and her father made her come on the trip or whatever because she is, or whatever the reason was, I originally thought that made him angry. I thought, well, his dad shouldn't think that way. That's why we saw that, or it was the left side of his face, I think, go up with that contempt. And I thought, well, that's what that is. But then the guy starts asking questions again. You know how I hate it when somebody interrupts somebody answering. But I'm glad he did, because we find out there that he's not used to that. They don't have that. They don't. Or if they probably have it, but they don't talk about it. Gay people, where he's from. You know, it's not a big point of conversation or anything there. So it's something sort of new to him, and he's uncomfortable with it. I think he goes on to talk about how, from a religious perspective, that's why it's uncomfortable for him. But so I thought that was really interesting, because the volume starts changing, especially, you're right, Chase, when he does say her, man, that thing is gone, and you can see it. But I don't think it's from deception. I think it might be an emotional thing going on there. So I think we're seeing a lot happen here. That happens when we're seeing that ebb and flow of emotions as they change and go from one to the other. It's not that one emotion of focusing on, I'm innocent, I didn't do this. You know, here's everything goes back to how innocent this person is and why they didn't do it and why they didn't do that. He's not doing that here. Not that he doesn't care, he's already talked about it. So for him, what?
Let me just say, for anybody listening right now, how Scott's describing this audio, Scott has very, very well confirmed synesthesia and can process these sounds as images, and once described to me a garbage truck picking up trash outside of his house, and he knew it was a new truck. It wasn't the same truck because it sounded like a bent pine cone, I think is the word you used, or something like that.
Yeah.
And the previous one was a pine cone, and this one's a little bit bent or something. So like, I'll always defer to you in these statements where these fading facts are there, there's sound changes, but I want people watching to know that you hear at like Spider-Man level, and you can kind of, there's visuals. You're not thinking of a visual. It's instantly produced in your head when you're hearing sound. I just wanted to
I'll give you another story with Scott, a really good one. The first time I one of the first times I ever talked to Scott, he sent me this recorder and said, "Hey, record something for me." And he called me and said, "Are you sitting in front of a window?" And I said, "Yeah, about 8 feet in front of." No, he said about 8 feet in front of a window. I said, "Yeah, just about." He could tell by the sound coming off of glass behind me what was going on. And I know he's not in my house, so it's crazy, crazy.
As far as you knew. As far as you knew.
As far as you
No,
know,
I'm pretty sure.
it's fine on you. You know,
I'm pretty sure you weren't in here. You didn't have a gunshot wound, so.
Exactly. So just so people know that I'm not full of it, because when you hear people talk about synesthesia, 90% of the time they're full of it. And I was part of the studies at Vanderbilt on synesthesia. So there's a record of me being there and doing all that. So I was there for a while doing those things. So that synesthesia is a real thing. If you hear somebody, what's that? Say Lord is the name, is the girl's, the woman, I guess, singer, says that she has it, and then she sees smoke in the room and stuff. It's not like that. It shows a little picture in your head when you hear like a sound, no matter what the sound is. It makes a little picture. Like if you think of an apple, it's a picture like that. When you hear, no matter what the sound is, it makes a little picture in your head. So it's always a running visual of something. So that's what it was with the garbage truck. It was a different one because it looked different. To be like an apple and a lemon, two different things. So when I'm talking, when they're talking about synesthesia, that's what it is, and I'm not making it up. I actually do have it. I'm one of the. A lot of people I think have it, but a lot of people don't and say they do. Anyway, so I think that's why we're seeing that side of contempt on his face. He's not used to hearing that. And there's one thing in a story I tell every now and then about a friend of ours named Payson when I was in Boston, and all the studio guys were together. And everybody's musicians, and Payson wasn't a musician. But he said, we need to get together and talk. I need to tell everybody something. And Lord, we thought this guy was going to tell us he was dying of something, you know. So we all go meet him. We go to our favorite place is called the Cask and Flagon there near whatever the baseball field thing. I can't remember the name of the baseball field there when there's in sports in Boston. And he got our attention. He said, okay, here's what, and we were all talking. He goes, let me tell you what's happening. I said, okay, great. We listened. He goes, I want to tell you all that I'm gay. And we're like, so anyway, he was telling me, and we just went on with our conversation because nobody cared. It didn't affect us in the least. And so that's what I thought this guy was coming from. He just didn't, he didn't care. As long as if you're a drummer, you're not the gay drummer, you're the drummer. Can you do what you're supposed to do? Are you the keyboard player, not the gay keyboard player? Can you do what you're supposed to be doing? So I thought that's where he was coming from. And if this guy hadn't kept talking, then I don't think we would have found out that it bothered him because he didn't understand that. He wasn't used to talking about it. So I think it's good that he actually did that. Greg, what do you got?
Give you a data point. He is now a preacher, so that could play something in the way he responds to people. A very small church, I read like 50 or 60 people.
And exorcist.
Yeah, and exorcist. I forgot to add that. Yeah.
That's interesting you say that, Greg, because I was trying to work out where's this interview happening, and then he moves to one side, and you can see a couple of pews, and I was like, hang on, this is a tiny little chapel.
That's it. In a 50 to 60 person church somewhere in the mountains of Grenada is what I read.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that explains some of the hand movement and a bunch of other things we're talking about, being more up in the passion plane rather than down lower, possibly. Let's talk for just a minute about body language in general, because there's this wonderful thing that we are all gifted with, barring disability, and that's the ability to use our body to tell a story. And we're really good at it usually. Most of us, when we're telling the truth, our cadence is fluid and smooth. Well, listen to his, especially with that melodic accent. It makes it easy to pick up on a deviation. That boom, ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. It's beautiful. You hear him telling his story and it's lilting along. Scott would call that loping. And then we also use our body to punctuate what we're thinking. And Chase, I use Illustrator over as a broad thing, and what you're calling body narration is a subcategory of that to me. But yeah, same thing. Agreed. Smoking, I was doing this, I was doing that. And so that can become false cognitive if you're trying to communicate with people and you can get the wrong signal. Then there are gestures, things like an okay sign or a thumbs up. Those have to be understood by everybody you're projecting to. If they're not, then it's just a weird thing to do. Yeah, exactly. So it has to be something people understand. And so you got gestures, you got illustrators, you've got these regulators, a way to say, hold on a second, let me finish. That's a way to tell your story. Your body is designed for this. And then you've got these other two things that show discomfort. I need to get rid of some nervous energy. That's an adapter. I'm releasing nervous energy or comforting myself. And then I'm really uncomfortable, so I'm going to put something between us. So we're unintentionally sending those last two messages, but those big messages, our pitch, our tone, our cadence, are all tools that our brain uses to punctuate what it's thinking, how to get you to understand the story better. When we get fight or flight, when there's a problem, when something starts to happen, and Chase said it earlier, there's no indicators of deception. Where there are indicators that something has changed. When those start to change and we start seeing those illustrators drop suddenly, there's a reason. When the person's pitch, voice, tone, or cadence change, there's a reason. And then I say, of the five, two are negative, five or three are positive. So as long as you're getting gestures, illustrators, and regulators, you're probably getting a pretty good story. The minute that stops hiding, the other good thing is because you use your hands to illustrate, use your hands to barrier, they're noticeable when it happens. So we get red flags. What we see here is a guy rattling along smoothly and telling us a story with his body pretty consistently. I agree with you. There's a drop off at her, but that could be for a ton of reasons. I also think that when we see this not.
We just lost Chase. You still there, dude? I bet his battery went dead or something.
The camera turned off for some reason.
You mean to keep going? Or you mean to wait till you're back?
Keep going.
I'll figure it out.
Okay. So the other interesting piece, I agree, when he talks about smoking and he does double shoulders up, I think he's being legitimate. Look, I was uncomfortable with it. As a matter of fact, watch him when he's talking about her smoking and see the disgust or the contempt in his face. And then he does that tongue jut, the one that's really pronounced when he's talking about her smoking. I think it could be disapproval of her smoking and how it made her look. But I'm going to tell you that people automatically jump to a tongue jut is always a negative thing. John Ramsey suffers from this in a big way because when you're talking to John Ramsey across the table, he's doing this all the time. It's just a mannerism and it's just there. So don't assign that kind of meaning to it. Look for that fluid movement. And I think you'll find out that this guy's mostly fluid in his story, telling a story with his body. There's one interesting thing in the entire thing that I like most. His eyes go wide open. He makes Mark one of your vocal clicks, like he like he just remembered something. It's a surprised look when he talks about her being gay and her father being against her. And that part's pretty interesting to me because it means that it's not something he's practiced or it would have been fluid and just rolled out of him. It may be the first time somebody's asked him in a long time. And I think we're seeing a congruent story with some minor deviation. That's all I got.
I think the only thing that bothered me in this was, and I think maybe you said it, Mark, about the single shoulder shrug where his chin went toward that because he did
That's
that
later, right?
Is it in this one? I think it's in this one, isn't it?
I didn't notice.
When it was time to go, isn't that when he talks about? He said it was about 1 o'clock, and I said I have to go.
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to go back and
I missed that.
Look, I missed that.
Okay, but that's the only thing that bothered me. I think this is the one.
Doesn't he tap his watch?
Yeah, I think he might.
I have to go.
Yeah, but he does this thing where he turns his head, but it's weird because it's not a chin to the. It doesn't do the full turn, but he just does this number. So that's the only thing that bothered me. It's the only thing that stood out where I went, but there are no clusters around that, so you got to dismiss it. It means nothing. So there you go. All right, we're good?
Yeah.
All right. Come on in, Chase. What do you got? There it is. There it is, Captain.
So I went down like I normally do, changed my clothes, had a quick shower, and I came up. When I came up, she was on the deck, on the decking outside. So she saw me and she said, hi. And I said, hi. But she was smoking a lot, and that's not something I know or like. I grew up in Grenada, you hardly ever saw people smoke. And I was young, so it was like not a norm for me.
Yeah.
So we went up to the club, because that's where I was going. And we sat there. Of course, it's noisy, so there's not a lot you can say. But she was smoking a lot. And I asked her, I said, why are you, for me, it's uncomfortable. And it's like, why are you? And she said to me, she said her dad is an insurance manager or something like that. And he found out that she's gay. And he forced her to come to the cruise. Well, first of all, with hearing that, I was like, well, I mean, I didn't know what answer to give anyway. So I said to her, I was going on the dance floor. I was only going to be able to dance maybe 1 or 2 songs because of the time. So we came on the dance floor. dance. We both came, we both were on the floor. I know there were cameras that took photos of us dancing. I remember seeing all of that. And about 5 minutes to 1, I said, look, I have to go. I've got to be out of passenger area. And I left. That was my last conversation. And
That was the last time you saw her?
Last time I saw her.
What was your response when she told you she was gay?
That's not something I'm used to.
Yeah.
So I really did not know. I just thought it was wrong that they would have forced her to come, on the cruise because they find out that she was gay. But there was not much I could even say about it because it's not something I was used to.
Yeah.
So I just left it as,
How do you feel about that in general?
I have an adopted brother who's gay. And I have some friends who's gay.
Yeah.
And on the cruise ship, there were some musicians who were really close to me that was gay. But I remember telling one of them, we can be friends. We can talk. Once you're gonna keep it appropriate, because this is not something I am used to. I mean, I grew up in church as a little boy. And we never talked too much about these things in church as little children. But we knew that it was not something that we will do or we should get ourselves involved in. And as a young boy at that time, didn't know how to relate to anyone like that. So I had friends, but we would talk, we would play music together. On the ship, we would talk, but I would not be in the circle so much because that was kind of different to me.
Why do you think she told you that?
I think because I asked why she was smoking. Maybe she wanted me to know, I don't know. But all I can say that was her reply to me.
Oh, that it
for
was
the reason
she
why.
was smoking because of the stress.
Yes. So to me, that's a reply from the question I asked because he was smoking here. Really and truly, I would have rather not be there. So that's why I asked, why are you smoking like that? Because it was like what you call a chain. Once you've done with one,
smoking.
another one was lit. Another one was lit. While we were there, maybe about 3 cigarettes was lit at the same time, one after the other one, But it was not enough time because the person I am, I like to console people. I like to talk with people.
Yeah.
There was not enough time. Maybe if the following day I would have seen her, maybe I would have.
So
I have the shortest thing for all this, so.
It's fine. Mine's pretty short as well.
Mine too. Mine's super short.
Yeah.
Greg, you want to go first? Yours is probably.
Sure, I'll go first. I got a little bit on this one. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, this is another interesting. We see the lip licking thing, so people are going to assign something to it. His body language is a little more closed up when he talks about his gay brother. So maybe when we go back and look at the disapproval look in his face and the contempt, it has to do with the whole lifestyle. We can't tell that. But he doesn't go out of his way to mask that. And then he's back to, as soon as he finishes talking about his brother, he goes back to big illustrators and the separation of fingers and thumbs as he talks about people he knows. I think it's a really unsophisticated way of saying something, or Scott, that you were saying he was going to do in the beginning. I don't care. It's just, in effect, an unsophisticated way of saying I don't care, because he's not masking that he doesn't approve of it. He's just saying that's your life. You also got to remember, if he's a preacher today, the way he responds to this question could affect his congregation. So that could be playing in the back of his head. But we don't see a lot of glitchy. We still see that melodic accent, the whole thing. If there was a reason for him to feel fight or flight and to glitch all this stuff up, this would be it. Right in here when he's asking questions about how'd you feel about her being gay? Because it could be that he was rejected by her and that's the reason they're saying this. Now, you have to watch the show to know that after this, she was seen on the deck of her parents' stateroom. So it's kind of a neither here nor there. But if there's a thing that could trigger fight or flight, this would be it. How did you feel about her being gay? And his response is saying, look, I don't care. Then he does get down to this, when he looks down to his right, one of the heaviest emotion things we see is when he's talking about not hanging out with gay musicians socially, but we still don't see limbic thought. We don't see a person in the point of being aggravated, of agitation, of changing even his speech patterns. And that's one of the first indicators you have is people speeding up or slowing down or getting a shrill call. And then one of my favorite pieces of body narration, as you would call it, chasing the entire thing, is when he's talking about her smoking and how he didn't like it. He fans the smoke away from his face. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, I agree. Look, he's on a real roll here because it's a great combination of his eye accessing. It's going to the right places at the right time, the right eye contact with the interviewer, not too much, enough to engage with the story, but then the eyes break away to grab information or get close to an emotion. And then really good descriptors as well, or illustrators, just as you were saying there, Greg, and then baton gestures, conducting along to the rhythm of the speech as well. So he's on a real roll. He's really engaged in this storytelling. To your point, Greg, interesting moment where he says, as a young boy at that time, he's talking about, as I would take it, not really understanding, the gay community. Because as a young boy at the time, and he looks down the camera at that point, I think you might be right, Greg. This is important for him because his congregation could be watching this. It's tricky because there's a religious thing to hold there, and there's a social thing to hold there, an empathetic thing to hold at the same time. And he's got to kind of, I imagine, balance these two things out. And I think he wants us to understand that he is still that kind of church-going boy from Grenada, very conservative and very proper. My understanding of Grenada and the Caribbean as a generalization, so let me just do a massive generalization here, which could be quite true, is within its church-going, it is very proper and very conservative, essentially, at heart. And within the education, look at the beauty of the way he speaks English, the way he will, the great music to it. But again, the emphasis, the idea of speaking it properly. Again, this comes from a church-based education of the English language. Often, the schools go back to the wife of the vicar running the school, running the school. So everything is church-based. Everything is very conservative. Everything is very, very proper. And I think that's his culture. That's his background, as it is for many, but not all, in those islands and in Grenada. So, an interesting insight into what his background is and what he wants us to know that his background still is. Chase, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, I totally agree. The only thing I saw out of place here was, or different, I won't say out of place, different, is when he's talking about his brother. I think when people are communicating with a lot of sincerity or love, you ask somebody about the first time their kid, fell down or hurt themselves or something, they're gonna do this. They'll talk like this. They'll kind of like, I remember this. I think that might be what we're seeing here. But overall, nothing here forms a full behavioral cluster. There's no group of behaviors that point to deception that I see. A few anomalies, but not enough to say anything definitively. This is not how somebody showing high stakes deception looks like at all. Scott?
Yeah, I agree with you. He's just relaying information. He's uncomfortable with gay people, and he's talking about it. He's being honest about it. He's just telling what his feelings are about it. And with his, we're talking about a lot of illustrators here because this guy's going, when we see him, it's not all the time like this. The only time we really see him constantly is with Mark. But if we were trying to imitate Mark, what would happen is there would be, after a while, if I was going to try to imitate Mark and I was going to do the way he does, after a while they would start getting out of sync because I don't know how he's doing. That's him being honest. When he's saying things like that, I could keep doing that, but it would look goofy. It wouldn't look real. And so this guy, if he was doing it to try to sell what he's doing, it would look goofy and it would be out of place. And you'd say, what's wrong with this? Doesn't look right to me. But we're not seeing that. Although he's gesturing or he's illustrating almost the whole time, and when he does, man, they're huge. And if you watch Mark's are there all the time, but they change, but they're always spot on. And they get specific on things. And this guy wouldn't be able to think that way, I don't think. It'd be hard for anybody to think that way and keep thinking, okay, I've got to get specific now, so I've got to do these. It'd be hard to keep up with, so it would look fake. So I think we're just seeing him be honest here. He's just relaying information and being himself. I don't think we're seeing anything odd or out of place. We good?
Yep.
All right.
How do you feel about that in general?
I have an adopted brother who's gay. And I have some friends who's gay.
Yeah.
And on the cruise ship, there were some musicians who were really close to me that was gay. But I remember telling one of them, we can be friends. We can talk. Once you're gonna keep it appropriate, because this is not something I am used to. I mean, I grew up in church as a little boy. And we never talked too much about these things in church as little children. But we knew that it was not something that we will do or we should get ourselves involved in. And as a young boy at that time, didn't know how to relate to anyone like that. So I had friends, but we would talk, we would play music together. On the ship, we would talk, but I would not be in the circle so much because that was like kind of different to me.
Why do you think she told you that?
I think because I asked why she was smoking, maybe she wanted me to know, I don't know. But all I can say that was her reply to me.
Oh, that it
for
was
the
like
reason
she
why.
was smoking because of the stress.
Yes. So to me, that's a reply from the question I asked because he was smoking here. Really and truly, I would have rather us not be there. So that's why I asked, why are you smoking like that? Because it was like what you call a chain. Once you've done with one,
smoking.
another one was lit. Another one was lit. While we were there, maybe about 3 cigarettes was lit at the same time, one after the other one, you know? But it was not enough time because the person I am, I like to console people. I like to talk with people.
Yeah.
There was not enough time. Maybe if the following day I would have seen her, maybe I would have.
What's with, so there were these two women that were recently interviewed that were there on that cruise too, that they thought they saw Amy and you head back up to the Viking Lounge after it closed. No, it didn't happen.
First of all, the keys that we use, and I did not even know that until this thing happened. The card keys that we use for our doors to go into the room. So once I went down and we went into my room, it would read the time you came in. And I never really knew that. As I said, I was a young boy. All this technology was not known to me.
Yeah.
You know?
So they knew when you went back to your stateroom.
I only got to know that the following day. And this is how I know. The hotel manager, the morning, around 7 o'clock, I was awakened by a call by the hotel manager. And he asked me, Douglas, do you have a woman in your room? It was forbidden.
Yeah.
It was forbidden bringing them in our room, going in our room. It was forbidden dating. And I'm going to be very straight with you. In my life, I've been in the Royal Caribbean for a little over 5 years. And I've sit and talked with a lot of people and we've made dates and stuff like that. But of course, 1 week, so nothing could, you know?
Yeah.
So he asked me the question and I said, no. And I asked, like, why? He said that the woman you were talking to last night at the club, we can't find her. So I said, okay. And he said, all right, I will call you back. The phone was hung up. Matter of fact, he told me, don't leave the room, but he will talk to, you know?
Wow.
And it's, a matter of fact, right after that, from what I know, they ground the ship shortly after that, close it up, nobody can go out, nobody can come in. And this is when the investigation started, is when I realized that they could have checked the time I went into my room.
Yeah.
Because I did not know that. So I'm not allowed to be back out of my room until in the morning period.
Yeah.
So once I clock in at 1, sometimes I might have gone downstairs sometimes. Normally we would go downstairs and if I'm hungry, I would go to the crew mess and all of that and then clock in, you know? But once I got in, I did not come back out until I got that phone call. And then I was told, don't leave the room. Matter of fact, was both of us in the room, one of the other musicians. So each room, we were 4 musicians at the band. So each 2 in one room, 2 in another room on bunk beds. So Oscar Alexander was the guy there with me on the top. I was at the bottom.
Oh, so there was another guy in the room with you.
Chase, what do you got?
So this right here is a behavior change that occurs in a critical moment. So we have a high blink rate spike. I know he has a high blink rate as kind of a norm, but it spikes well above this, like 30 blinks per minute above this. And it's at the moment the woman being interviewed are mentioned. And this is a stress response. And we tend to blink more often. So blink rate is how often we blink. I think my knee just showed. So now you know I'm wearing some shorts here.
And let me tell you something. Now that you brought up the shorts, those things are too short, man. I
They
dare
are
you to stand
super.
up. I dare you to stand up.
Here we go. Let's
Don't
do
do
this.
it. Oh, dude.
So let's talk about blink rate. We blink more often when we're stressed out. So our eyes need to kind of wet themselves, lubricate themselves again. But the opposite, the slow blink rate, does not always mean relaxation, does not always mean safety. Lower blink rate is tied to focus. So we could be stressed out, but really focused, like a predator is approaching us, and our blink rate will be 0 because they're real threat. The blink rate skyrocketing due to threat is a perceived future threat. So those are the two differences in my book anyway. There's not enough other clusters in here that would alarm me at all. And the only other thing he's talking about here is this door key. That's a big point to me. I believe he fully believes this piece of evidence exonerates him fully, and the confidence that he has when he's talking about it is very reassuring to me. I'm going first here, so I don't know if y'all disagree. He's not redirecting the conversation. He's not demonizing the victim that we see so often. He's not downplaying details. He's not overloading with details in unnecessary areas, shifting topics or subjects, or injecting ambiguity, which is, I think, the most common thing that we see in a lot of these cases. Let me just squirt some ambiguity in every little crevice that I can find. This is all piling up to be a pretty good sign to me. It may shift in the next video, though. Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, Chase, I agree with one of the things I love about what we do here is we come at this, and if you don't know, we don't discuss these videos until you're watching us. We all watch these individually, and we come together and talk about it. And I love the fact that we see the same things. When people ask me, why do I know body language is real? This is why. Because, and people also always say it's just snake oil and I do this. And they get irritated. And I said, well, did you just read my body language? Now I'm getting triggered here. You're causing me a problem. So what I love is that this is readable and we can all see it. And in your head, you've got two operating systems running. One of those is limbic thought. And limbic thought is there to keep you alive and moving and away. That's what, when that kicks in, is when you get fight or flight and all the adrenaline and that. Then you got that frontal lobe and all that big wasted to protect you brain going on. The reason that military guys train under duress is because it comes back to you under duress. So we're going to see some limbic thought in for the first time ever. We see his blink rate increase, and that's autonomic. Chase was just talking about autonomic response. Your blink rate goes through the roof. And we see intense eye contact at the same time. That's an indicator something has changed in his head. And at the same time, he squints, narrowing his eyes to get a better focus, and he shows some concern on his brow. That's a cluster. That's a cluster to say something is going on. It's not a cluster of deception. It's a cluster to say something's going on. And then we see a barrier increase as he crosses his body. So all the storytelling tools I've been telling you about are gone. Now he's in protective mode. That could be because it's a new data point. Somebody said this. Well, that doesn't mean he's lying or anything else. It means I've got to defend myself against some new thing. And so what matters now is how he responds. And how he responds is he comes out of it swinging. And Chase, I agree with you 100%. As soon as he hears the claim, before it's even over, he denies it, lip pursing, head shaking, lips of disapproval, for it just didn't happen. Then listen to all that natural cadence. Somebody's trying to call me. Sorry, guys. I usually have that off. Then he goes into why it can't be true. And it's all that same lilting natural cadence. Then he's back to good use of illustrators. He's back up to good use of the 3 versus the 2. It comes back to where he was before. He's demonstrative when they're asking him something. When he says, the guy asked me, did I have a girl in my room? You see that head twist? That's the preparation. We all do it. And we're like, this is a 2-step question. What's next? Why is what he's doing. And you can see it. We all recognize that body language. if you are really worried about this guy before, this is leaning more and more toward he's trustworthy. He just got new information and he responded to the new information in a way any of us would like, what? That whole thing. And then as he talks about the other guy in the room, you see more congruency. Illustrators are up, tone, pitch, cadence, blank rate's gone. All that's gone as soon as he defends against that one issue. Scott, what do you got?
All right. Yeah. When the interviewer says they thought they saw, when he says that, we see the barriers come out at that point. The left arm goes up, his right arm. I can can't tell, but his arm comes up. He starts blocking right there. There are several little things that group together there. Now you could look at this and say, "Oh, this guy is, here it comes, man. He's being deceptive." We're seeing this guy get frustrated and a little bit PO'd at this point, because all kinds of information, like you were saying, Greg, starts coming in here. Then he said, they saw you head back up to the Viking Lounge. That's when we see that lip pursing. He doesn't agree with that. He didn't like that. Whether they saw him head back up there or not, he doesn't like that. So we're seeing his frustration come out. So everything changes here. So that lets us know that and the cues that we're seeing tell us that he's being bothered by this. And then first of all, let's see, when he says, first of all, that hand comes way out and his arm goes out that way. I think it's his right arm comes out, almost in a pointing thing, and he starts that pointing. That's, again, as he's looking around, he's structuring that answer. So there's a lot of emotions that pop up out of that. This isn't, a lot of times we'll see somebody who's really controlled, and no matter what you ask them, we'll see little things fire off, but we won't see these big movements, not explosions, but big things that you would normally do as you move around and start thinking and become frustrated. So he gets super detailed here as well. And that's why he wants to make everything that he's talking about his alibi. He wants to make sure this is understood without any question, without any doubts in here. That's why he's getting so specific with these things. And then he speeds up, and his illustrators and his cadence, voice tone, and volume, and his little tick rate, all those things speed up a little bit. And in a couple of spots, they really group together. But we're just seeing groups of cues that tell us he's frustrated and doesn't agree with what's happening. They're not deceptive. And that's why you got to be careful when you do this, because as when we say, you always have to look for clusters. You'll see a cluster of behaviors here and a cluster of cues, but you got to know what those cues are suggesting from the psychological view of this. So
and how he responds to that stress.
Yeah. So that's why things like this get kind of dangerous. That's why his innocence or whatever is in question here, because people are seeing those and going, "Oh, I know what that means," because they may not be listening to someone on the internet who is studied and their information is valid. How's that sound? I'm not bad-mouthing anybody. I'm just saying they're maybe listening to the wrong person or people to get their information from. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, well, I've got that image of Chase's shorts burnt on my retina at the moment. I'm still in slight shock, but I'll try and move past that. Look, there's no break in his body language from what it was previously here. It's very, very good. It's very honest. No, he says. There's a clear denial around this idea of him returning to the lounge in some way. Clear denial. No break in baseline around that. What I love here is it could look to some like there's a single shoulder shrug on, he asked me the question, I said no. But actually what's happening there, as you were telling us there, Greg, is the head retracts back and the lips purse into what I would say is a very cultural Caribbean, as a generalization, affronted lean back. An affronted lean back. I've seen that a number of times with friends of mine, both in Canada and in London, who are from that background. And it really is a very kind of conservative affront of how very dare you even suggest that would happen. Again, to get that cultural reaction if you're trying to pretend that happened, or you're trying to deal with the complexity of lying to somebody to produce a beautiful cultural gesture at that point would be almost impossible to do. And yet he does it. So seems to me, just as I think everybody's said here, a great example of truth-telling from his point of view. going on here.
You know, what's with, so there were these two women that were recently interviewed that were there on that cruise too, that they thought they saw Amy and you head back up to the Viking Lounge after it closed.
No.
No, didn't happen.
First of all, the keys that we use, and I did not even know that until this thing happened. The card keys that we use for our doors to go into the room. So once I went down and we went into my room, it would read the time you came in. And I never really knew that. As I said, I was a young boy. All this technology was not known to me.
Yeah.
You know?
So they knew when you went back to your stateroom.
I only got to know that the following day. And this is how I know. The hotel manager, the morning around 7 o'clock, I was awakened by a call by the hotel manager. And he asked me, Douglas, do you have a woman in your room? It was forbidden.
Yeah.
It was forbidden bringing them in our room, going in our room. It was forbidden dating. And I'm going to be very straight with you. In my life I've been in the Royal Caribbean for a little over 5 years. And I've sit and talked with a lot of people and we've made dates and stuff like that. But of course, 1 week, so nothing could, you know?
Yeah.
So he asked me the question and I said, no. And I asked, like, why? He said that the woman you were talking to last night at the club, we can't find her. So I said, okay. And he said, all right, I will call you back. The phone was hung up. Matter of fact, he told me, don't leave the room, but he will talk to, you know?
Wow.
And it's, a matter of fact, right after that, from what I know, they ground the ship shortly after that, close it up, nobody can go out, nobody can come in. And this is when the investigation started, is when I realized that they could have checked the time I went into my room.
Yeah.
Because I did not know that. So I'm not allowed to be back out of my room until in the morning period.
Yeah.
So once I clock in at 1, sometimes I might have gone downstairs sometimes. Normally we would go downstairs and if I'm hungry, I would go to the crew mess and all of that and then clock in, you know? But once I got in, I'm in. I did not come back out until I got that phone call. And then I was told, don't leave the room. Matter of fact, was both of us in the room, one of the other musicians. So each room, we were 4 musicians at the band. So each 2 in one room, 2 in another room, on bunk beds. So Oscar Alexander was the guy there with me. On the top, I was at the bottom.
Oh, so there was another guy in the room with you?
On the top, I was at the bottom.
Oh, so there was another guy in the room with you too?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, Oscar Alexander. And that was it. Then came the FBI.
Yeah.
They ground the ship.
Did you have to take a lie detector test, or was
again, I go back to my innocence of these things. So of course, every person who would have interacted with her, the people who cleaned the room, the people who served her dinner, everybody was interrogated. I was put all of these things on me, and maybe did 1 or 2 or 3 because the sessions went on and on and on and on and on. Lie detector tests.
What did they say to you afterwards?
Well, at that time, they did not say anything much to me. They took the stuff off and they released me. But then it was followed up by a woman called Sherry. And I'm sorry, she left her card with me, but that's years ago. Yeah. Sherry was an FBI agent.
Yeah.
She came to Grenada, met me at a hotel, and interviewed me a couple of times. And at the last time she spoke with me, she said to me, "Listen, you are clear from this." She said to me,
"That's gonna be good to hear."
Well, of course. I mean, I was not really worried because I know that I don't know anything about all of this. But at the same time, I was a bit nervous because this is a new thing for me. This is my name being mixed up in something that I don't know about, and I'm not used to this. Listen, my life has been, I've lost so many opportunities.
Because of this?
Because of this.
How? Because they Google your name or something?
And that would come up.
Yeah.
You know, I've been such intensively coming from Greece to Grenada when I got to London just because my name.
Really?
You know, I mean, it don't happen now. I travel freely, you know, nobody give me a hard time, you know, but at that time, so I've lost, there were contracts on other ships that people wanted me to come for a couple months, good paying for a few months, that once my name was entered, say no, they would say that I had something to do with this missing girl, and I lost. I lost the contracts, and I struggled for a long time. But I'm good. I set up my little business, you know, and but for me, that is as much as I can really say that I know about this.
Great.
All right, Mark, what do you got?
Just two things on this. He says, I don't know anything about this. Lovely double shoulder shrug on that. That's just the way it is. You know, he's run out of information on this one, and it's very honest. And here's something else that feels very, very honest to me. And I say it feels very, very honest because it's very, very subtle, this element, but there's a real break of emotion in him when he talks about the lost opportunities and his name being demoted in some way. He doesn't say that, but I'm passing that idea out of what he's saying, that he's been brought down. This has been a real loss for him, and it truly triggers empathy in me. I'm like, poor guy. And it's very subtle what's happening there. And I always test very, very low for empathy. So if he's triggering me, then there's probably something up. There's probably something very honest happening there. Probably. So I was interested by that one. Scott, what do you got on this one?
I'm pretty much in the same spot. Everything's really open. His illustrators are really smooth. He's loping right along, just relaying information. You know, there's when it comes to the questions, that again, the interviewer kind of starts asking too many questions too fast, but it doesn't really matter here because there's nothing really to see. You know, but the interviewer does a great job. I'll tell you that. I'm not slamming this guy at all. He's not an interrogator. He doesn't know how to do it. But a couple of times he could have just paused a little bit because there was some information coming out and it changes a little bit. But I don't see it changing from anything where we're going to get something valuable out of there because it's pretty much the same stuff. And there's at one point where he makes him pause and he goes back to what he was talking about and starts again. I think it was in this one. So it starts telling the information he was going to give him, you know. So how are things looking on the Enterprise, Captain? You got anything?
Cruising along at the same speed as you. I fully agree. The biggest thing, number one thing about this entire clip that we don't see, if someone's engaging in any kind of perception management, you never see them admit to being nervous about something like you do here. He admits he was nervous about this polygraph. I think he's honest in it entirely about the polygraphs. He explains them in a way that doesn't try to discredit them or understand them at all. He's okay talking about every single detail, including his own nervousness. I think it's a really authentic display of emotion about how this affected his life, which, Mark, I completely agree. I had some empathy. I watched him at like 5:30 this morning, sitting in my office, and I was like, man, I can kind of feel what that feels like. He discusses these contracts that he had with these other cruise ships and these other cruise lines in a very honest way, and he has the same behavior all around as when he's discussing something completely unrelated to this investigation. So completely agree. Greg?
What's interesting to me is this video is one of my favorites we've ever had because it shows us both baselines. The nervous baseline over something that's gone wrong, naked, not shellacked, not covered, and then the smooth cadence, everything else of the truthfulness and just out right in the open. And that first baseline for a verifiable story that's stressful is around his, you know, all the being investigated and all that piece, his cadence, his tone, his volume, his pitch, his illustrators, his whole hands and his whole body, his adapters, nothing changes, his gestures, even picks up the phone, does all of that stuff just like he's been doing when he's telling us about this girl missing. Then when he hits lost opportunities, we see limbic thought because it's stressful for him and you can see it. Either he's cool as a cucumber when he's talking about that woman in the beginning, or he is not feeling any stress talking about it. Because when he talks about losing this business, his blink rate increases. He's got contempt as he talks about losing a couple of good paying contracts. There's change in cadence, eye contact, tone, even pitch under stress about that. So if all that's true, then what this looks like is we know he's been congruent and clear in his messaging in what he's told us to now. This starts to seal the deal pretty quickly.
On the top, I was at the bottom.
Oh, so there was another guy in the room with you too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Oscar Alexander. And that was it. Then came the FBI.
Yeah.
They ground the ship.
Did you have to take a lie detector test, or was
They, again, I go back to my innocence of these things. So, of course, every person who would have interacted with her, the people who cleaned the room, the people who served her dinner, everybody was interrogated. I was put all of these things on me, and maybe did 1 or 2 or 3 because the sessions went on and on and on and on and on. Lie detector tests.
what did they say to you afterwards?
Well, at that time, they did not say anything much to me. They took the stuff off and they released me. But then it was followed up by a woman called Sherry. And I'm sorry, she left her card with me, but that's years ago.
Yeah.
Sherry was an FBI agent.
Yeah.
She came to Grenada,
Oh, wow.
met me at a hotel, and interviewed me a couple of times. And at the last time she spoke with me, she said to me, "Listen, you are clear from this." She said
That's
to me,
gonna be good to hear.
well, of course. I mean, I was not really worried because I know that I don't know anything about all of this. But at the same time, I was a bit nervous because this is a new thing for me. This is my name being mixed up in something that I don't know about, and I'm not used to this. Listen, my life has been, I've lost so many opportunities
Because of this?
because of this.
How? Because they Google your name or something?
And that would
Terrible.
come up,
Yeah.
you know? I've been such intensively coming from Greece to Grenada when I got to London just because my name,
Really?
you know? I mean, it don't happen now. I travel freely, you know,
Good.
nobody give me a hard time, you know, but at that time, so I've lost, there were contracts on other ships that people wanted me to come for a couple months, good paying for a few months, that once my name was entered, say no, they would say that I had something to do with this missing girl, and I lost.
Yeah.
I lost the contracts, and I struggled for a long time. But I'm good. I set up my little business, you know, and but for me, that is as much as I can really say that I know about this.
Great. Great. Thank you very much. Is there anything else? Have you ever looked online about what people have said, or do you try to stay away from that?
I just stay away. Let me see. My inbox, my Facebook, people have been writing me horrible stuff for years.
Really?
My wife, for years. My wife just
People
ignore
write
it.
to your wife?
Yes, once she has a Douglas.
Yeah.
My daughter, who lives in the U.S., has been bombarded. As a matter of fact, I think she met with some people some time
You know
ago.
what?
Yes, only lately. We haven't talked much lately because lately she called me one day,
Yeah.
maybe about 6 or 7 weeks ago. But first of all, she called me maybe about 8 weeks ago and said, "Daddy, you know, this thing with the girl, look, I keep getting all this stuff coming to me, and I'm
Yeah.
concerned with my daughter."
Uh,
And I said, "Amika, listen, I say, if you want, you can let people know that I'm not your father, because I say, I can't explain this. This has been going on for years. People have been sending me stuff." And I said to her, "The truth will come out." I say, "And when the truth come out, I will sue the people who've been making documentaries about me." But I say, for now, it's just in the hands of who's investigating, but things always comes up. The truth, no matter how long it is, it always surfaces. Somebody's gonna know. Somebody knows something and somebody will speak at some point.
Yes, I think so.
And I said that to her. About a week later, she called me. And I'm not stupid. I know people were listening to her. And I didn't know at first, but I can tell you how I knew after. She called me and said, Daddy, you know, I spoke to you about the people sending me stuff. And this Amy, and there's a documentary about you. How come people can say they saw you on the beach? I said, well, God, I was not no beach. No way. I live in Grenada next to the beach. I hardly even go to the beach. So, I mean, why would I be on the beach? And people say they saw you. I say, well, if people have seen me somewhere, then of course they have evidence then that I know this girl. I said, I've never been anywhere. Since after talking to that girl that night, that was it. She questioned me and I was not thinking, well, I thought she was just maybe being rude to me at the time, but I believe she was doing what she had to do because people were listening. Let me tell you how I knew. Then she said, do you know she was gay? I said, yes. I said, she was smoking a lot. I asked her why she was smoking like this. And then she began to tell me that she's gay and her family found out and they forced her to come to the cruise. Once I say forced her to come to the cruise, I just heard the phone cut off, but it cut off not normal, like a clock. I've watched enough movies with FBI and stuff, tracking and listening. When did the phone hang up? I said there were people listening to this conversation. I didn't mind. I called her back. She never answered.
Can't believe that.
Put your camera on him.
You gotta be kidding.
Go over there. Oh, shit, he's awake. All right. Well, dang it. Okay, dude, we're going to wail on you, man. I'll let you have it.
Good to see you, Merlin.
Yeah, man. Good to see you working your ass off over there. I need to get over to Chase's place. All right, Greg, what do you got?
So now we see an increase in limbic thought. There's a blink increase. There's a licking increase. There's a lot more barriering and closing up. There's lower teeth exposed when he's talking about harassment and his wife. There's more expressions of anger and concern when he's talking about his daughter. You can see furrowing in the brow and still good use of illustrators telling his story. Here's what's interesting. When he's talking about this girl or about his daughter and he thinks that someone's on the line, guess what? In the show, somebody told me this morning, I didn't know this because I haven't watched the whole show. In the show, apparently there is a video of her trying to have this very conversation with her father while they listen in. So he was spot on and indignant for a good reason. Great opportunity. Chase, what do you got?
Yeah, I think this video is very promising. I think he's genuine and emotional about how it's affecting his life, which we don't hear very often. We don't hear often enough. He's speaking in rhythm with gestures here. He's comfortable talking multiple times about the truth coming out. He's confident about the truth coming out. We almost never hear that. And it's good to hear that here. He's even comfortable talking about suing the documentary filmmakers. There is no shift in behavior during any of this that is concerning to me or at all in a cluster that I can see. He's even hopeful and just happy when he mentions the continuing investigation. He's hopeful about the future investigation. He's hopeful that the truth is going to come to the surface and that something's going to come out. And then he's hopeful and excited that if someone saw him at the beach or whatever they're talking about here, that evidence is going to surface. There's some photo, there's some kind of evidence. Then he says, let it come to the surface. Let somebody send it. This is just not what we see in people who are worried about being found out or discovered to be guilty, like ever. In my book, his denial of after talking to that girl one night, that was it. And he says, that was it. This is a very confident denial, maybe one of the best denials. That's what a denial looks like. This one clip is what a denial looks like. It hits all these hallmarks of what we would expect in every perfect denial. And this, no matter how good of an actor you are, if you're stressed about being found out guilty, you can't rehearse this enough to make it look like this, in my opinion. Scott, what do you got?
Yeah, I agree that goes back to what I was saying earlier. If you're trying to do Mark and if you were saying, I want to do my illustrations on everything I talk about and make sure they hit, you couldn't do it. You couldn't rehearse what he's doing here because I think we're seeing the true emotion coming out. That's what's happening. That's one of the things we look for because usually we see all these cues happening when they're trying to hide the emotion and these things slip out. That's how we know. We say, oh, shoot, well, there's this, there's that, and there's this. So I think he's trying to get out as much information as he possibly can. And he's just relaying this stuff from a true emotional point of view. So, in any reference he has, he's not worried about referencing anything in there. He's not worried about talking about suing people or anything. I mean, this guy's ready to go. And so, if you have said something bad about him, boy, you better watch out because apparently, I'm under the impression that he didn't do anything. This guy's as innocent as the day is long, and it would be simple to find out because he doesn't care. He's like, yeah, whatever you want to do, let's look. Here it is. Here I am. What do you want to know? He's into telling about this. There's no pushback on it. The only barriering we saw was this, where he was getting all upset and bent out of shape, but he wasn't hiding in the barrier. That's not what that was. So I think his answers are pretty solid, even though they seem like they're not, and the structure of them doesn't seem perfect and all that. I think they're solid for true answers. I think we're seeing, and especially in this one, he's just being honest. And we're seeing an honest person. I agree with you 100%. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Just the passion that he has. He's up there in the passion plane. He's right up at chest height, no matter what the angle of the camera is. For sure, he comes up to passion. The truth will come out. He's vehement about that. Just as you say, Chase, somebody in being deceptive around it might say, well, I don't think we're ever going to find out whatever really happened here. Yeah. He's like, no, we're going to find out and the truth will come out here. The aggression that he has of that phone going down, that speaks to me about anger and frustration at his mistreatment. That is a classic for somebody who's innocent, because the unfairness of it, the unfairness of being mistreated will absolutely crash your dopamine levels and you won't care anymore. I think we've got somebody who's coming to the end of their tether on this one, because there's that super interesting story where he says, well, I just told my daughter, look, just tell them that I'm your stepfather. I mean, that's somebody who's come to the end of it, who's going, look, just disown me on this. What would it take for somebody to go, just say I'm not your dad anymore?
Yeah.
Do what it, I mean, that for me is just extraordinary. I mean, I wrote down here, that is horrific. He's in a horrific situation, I would say, here. That's all I got. That's all I got on that one.
Great. Thank you very much. Is there anything else? Have you ever looked online about what people have said, or do you try to stay away from that?
I just stay away. Let me see. My inbox, my Facebook, people have been writing me horrible stuff for years.
Really?
My wife, for years. My wife just ignored it.
To your wife?
Yes. Well, she is a Douglas.
Yeah.
My daughter, who lives in the U.S., has been bombarded. As a matter of fact, I think she met with some people some time ago. Yes. Only lately. We haven't talked much lately, because lately she called me one day.
Yeah.
Maybe about 6 or 7 weeks ago. But first of all, she called me maybe about 8 weeks ago and said, Daddy, you know, this thing with the girl, look, I keep getting all this stuff coming to me, and I'm concerned with my daughter. And I said, Amika, listen, I said, if you want, you can let people know that I'm not your father, because I say, I can't explain this. This has been going on for years. People have been sending me stuff, and I said to her, the truth will come out. I say, and when the truth come out, I will sue the people who've been making documentaries about me. But I say, for now, it's just in the hands of who's investigating, but things always comes up. The truth, no matter how long it is, it always surfaces. Somebody's gonna know. Somebody knows something, and somebody will speak at some point.
Yes, I think so.
And I said that to her. About a week later, she called me. And I'm not stupid. I know people were listening to her. And I didn't know at first, but I can tell you how I knew after. She called me and said, Daddy, you know, when I spoke to you about the people sending me stuff, and this Amy, and there's a documentary about you. How come people can say they saw you on the beach? I said, oh my God, I was not no beach, no way. I live in Grenada next to the beach. I hardly even go to the beach. So, I mean, why would I be on the beach? And people say they saw you. I say, well, if people have seen me somewhere, then of course they have evidence then that I know this girl. I said, I've never been anywhere. Since after talking to that girl that night, that was it. She questioned me and I was not thinking, well, I thought she was just probably being rude to me at the time, but I believe she was doing what she had to do because people were listening. Let me tell you how I knew. Then she said, do you know she was gay? I said, yes. I said, she was smoking a lot. I asked her why she was smoking like this. And then she began to tell me that she's gay and her family found out and they forced her to come to the cruise. Once I say forced her to come to the cruise, I just heard the phone cut off, but it cut off not normal, like a clock. I've watched enough movies with FBI and stuff, tracking and listening. I'm watching, when did the phone hang up? I said there were people listening to this conversation. I didn't mind. I called her back. She never answered.
All right. Well, we've taken a look at this, and I think we've pretty much made our mind about what we've seen. But what have you seen so far, Mark? What do you think about all this?
Well, look, here's what I'd want to do around what I've seen here. If you're ever around this guy, okay, if you can give him a gig, give him a gig, okay? Give him a gig. Or if you're at one of his gigs and he's got a gig, like, stick a few notes in the tip jar for him. If you're a church-going person and you're around his church and you fancy, hear him speak, go along and hear him speak and make a donation. If it's not one of those two things, leave the guy alone. Just leave him alone. Just, if you're not going to go to a gig and tip him or give him a gig or show up to one of his church things, if you're a church-going person, other than those two things, just leave the guy alone. Chase, what do you got?
I severely disagree. I'm kidding. Actually, we're seeing the same stuff here. The only points in here I saw real actual clusters were about the time they quit talking to each other. There was a cluster right there. At the exact time they quit talking to each other, something's off. How he found out she was gay, or that conversation, something's off. But that does not mean guilt. Something's just off about that. He's maybe nervous about his own recollection. I'm not sure. The only other time I'm seeing anything with a true behavioral cluster by the 5C behavior analysis model is when he's telling her goodbye. He might have asked her to his room, maybe. Maybe there was a much different exchange at the very end, and that was just different. Not modified because there's a death there, but just different to preserve his credibility. I'd imagine a similar cluster would show up about the event of her going missing no matter what if he was not involved. So I think the increased blink rate and stress we saw with the interview with the two women was brought up, was just his stress about the video. This has all the hallmarks of a person who might have engaged a little deeper than he's saying, but I do not see a single sign of involvement here. Keep in mind, the lack of behavior is not a lack of guilt. We're not trying to say that we're experts on the case or we're some kind of forensic experts or that we've even looked at all the tapes and all the evidence or anything like that. We're looking at the behavior of these clips. Based on that, yeah, get him a gig. Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, I say the same thing. If you think this is the solution to this Amy Bradley case, you look in the wrong direction, in my opinion. If you really want to see a beautiful example of a human body punctuating what the person's thinking, turn the sound off and watch. You'll see a fluid movement while his mouth is moving and he's talking, as good as Mark would prepare him if he were teaching him. And that way of speaking, that way of your body punctuating its own thoughts is powerful. The only time we see a deviation is when he sees some new evidence. They bring up some new evidence, and you automatically will say, we see a cluster. That cluster makes him look like something is going on, but his response to that stimulus is really what you want to know. His response to that stimulus is powerful and back to that baseline, that melodic body punctuating the entire story. I'd say, like Mark said, either give him some work or leave him alone. Scott, what do you got?
Are there people? I can't believe that somebody would see this guy talking and think that he's not being honest about this.
That's the key. This show, I don't think, has him on it at all.
Oh, okay.
They interview other people, but not him. So people automatically are looking for the boogeyman.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Well, apparently it can be seen. That's probably why it's not on there, So, but because this guy, to me, I don't see anything wrong. I don't see. The only thing I see wrong is that he lost gigs during this, man. That's hard for musicians. They don't make a lot of money in those cases. You know what I mean? Is that a Klingon? What are we looking at there? It's dark on that side.
Got Spock ears.
It's a Kazanti.
Yeah, but yeah, so I don't see any deception there, and I would be hard pressed to say I could go, somebody could go either way. It's one way or the other. I'd say I'd put all my chips on this guy that had nothing to do with it whatsoever, at all, not even a little bit. All right, that's all I got. We good?
Yeah.
All right, fellas, things know the good, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Cool.
Nice.
Hey, does this haircut make me look fat?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.